Thank you all for being here. I wanted to first and foremost thank the City Hall Rancho City Manager and Rancho Sheriff Station for allowing us to have this press conference here today. My name is Jacqueline Rodriguez. I'm the Public Affairs Officer for the District Attorney's Office. It was important for us to have this press conference here today, nearby a sheriff station and alongside sheriff deputies in honor of Deputy Sheriff Hector Cuevas Jr. Today our office is holding this press conference to announce charges against defendant Ryan Drain Turner, 22 of San Bernardino, for his alleged actions that led up to and included the death of Deputy Cuevas. In attendance today are San Bernardino County District Attorney Jason Anderson, San Bernardino County Sheriff Shannon D. Dykes, District Attorney Bureau of Investigations Chief Eric Hopley, and Deputy District Attorneys from both our Office of Traffic Safety Unit and our Major Crimes Unit. First, providing statements will be District Attorney Jason Anderson, followed by Sheriff Dykes. Jason?
Okay. Thank you, Jackie. Good afternoon. Jason Anderson, San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office. I'm here this afternoon to report out that this morning we filed charges based upon criminal conduct that occurred on Monday up in Victorville regarding Mr. Ryan Turner. We filed murder charges against Ryan Turner as it relates to the death of Deputy Cuevas as a result of the reckless indifference of driving that was displayed on Monday, a pursuit that lasted over 9 minutes on surface streets at speeds over 100 miles an hour that included running at least 4 red lights. Deputy Cuevas was involved in his job duties in assisting with a call of a stolen vehicle. We've also charged Mr. Turner with stolen vehicle. As you'll notice from the complaint, it's actually the 3rd time we allege that he would be guilty of stealing a car. And as a result of Deputy Cuevas' actions in that instance, Mr. Turner, we allege, fled. There's also information that we are aware of and that is in the public realm that this is not the first time that Mr. Turner has fled when he's been caught with a stolen car. In fact, it seems as each time it happens, that is what occurs. That certainly factors into our idea that this is a murder case because of the reckless indifference to life when you're aware of the risks that could occur. And we believe that he was, and obviously the driving in this particular case leads to the death of an individual. Murder charges are appropriate. It's oftentimes what's called sort of in the legal vernacular as a Watson murder. A lot of people think that you have to have a Watson murder simply because someone had a prior DUI and then they pick up a subsequent DUI and someone gets killed. That's not actually the case. We've been successful on a number of non-DUI Watson type of murder cases where there is a reckless indifference to life. I also want to point out that sometimes it escapes the public, is that if you're behind the wheel of a 3,500 or 4,000 pound vehicle and you're operating in a manner in which it's not legal, it's no mystery that vehicle can turn into a weapon and it can lead to death, and that's what it did in this particular case. In addition to the murder charge, other deputies were involved in ultimately the pursuit of Mr. Turner, so we filed a count of 2800.2 that involves ultimately the end of the pursuit that ended in the desert area. And then once it was determined that there was a lawful owner of the car that did not give Mr. Turner the permission to have it, we filed the auto theft in this particular case. I know that, at least I'm informed, that as a result of the process, tomorrow morning at 8:30, Mr. Turner will be arraigned in the Victorville court in person. And so that will begin the process. Beyond that, we would expect to pick the normal court dates to move this case forward. That's our design and intent. We continue to work on some of the evidence. Obviously, as you would be aware, that anytime you're dealing with vehicles in a major wreck, in this instance, and the actions of Mr. Turner, not only in his car, but obviously the vehicle that Deputy Cuevas was in and that he died in, there's a lot of scientific information that we will get, black box information, obviously video surveillance around the intersections in which this pursuit occurred. So it is developing in terms of an evidentiary standpoint, but based upon the conduct that we're aware of from Monday and subsequent conduct on behalf of Mr. Turner, we believe that clearly the evidence establishes beyond a reasonable doubt to support all of the counts that we have in the complaint. That's all the information I have at this point. I'm going to turn it over to Sheriff Dykus. I do want to commend his agency not only with the grace and class that they've conducted themselves with in the last couple days, but also being able to have the wherewithal to continue objective and independent investigation so that we can get the information that we need to pursue this case and lead to a successful prosecution. So, Sheriff, I'm going to turn it over to you, and with that, I want to thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Jason. I'm Shannon Dykus. I'm the Sheriff of San Bernardino County. And as you all can imagine, this is a difficult time for the Cuevas family, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, and certainly all of our community members. I'd like to thank Jason Anderson and his Bureau of Investigation for taking a stand against criminals like Ryan Turner, and he holds them accountable for their actions. Although these charges that are filed against Turner will not bring Hector back, I hope in some way that it helps the family through their loss. For Hector's work family, this includes law enforcement officers across San Bernardino County, this state, and our nation. As you move forward, I want you to know, and this should be an affirmation, that this county holds criminals accountable, and that the job that you do day in and day out makes a difference to all of our communities. Thank you all. Jackie.
All right, before I open it up for any questions, I just wanted to remind you this is an ongoing investigation. These are preliminary charges, and as the investigation continues, there may be more charges added. And in that respect, we're very limited on what we could say to uphold the rules of pre-trial publicity. So if you have any questions, Brian?
Yeah, for either the sheriff or Mr. Anderson, the other driver involved, the woman who was injured, made a statement which she has not wavered from, that she was getting ready to turn on a green arrow, which would mean that the deputy came through the intersection the opposite direction with no emergency lights or siren. Have you guys gotten far enough into the investigation where you guys can comment on that statement?
Yeah, Brian, thanks. I think that is accurate from the discovery that we have reviewed, but as it relates to a causation and all from a legal standpoint, that doesn't impact who started the entire action, which is the person who we allege has stolen a car and then immediately goes on a pursuit. So the idea that somehow there may be some superseding, intervening act, that's already contemplated within the law because that happens all the time across our streets all over the county. And so I guess what I'm saying is that it wouldn't necessarily be a situation where a defendant gets the benefit if it has to be a perfect traffic day all over the place where everybody obeys all of the vehicle laws. There's nobody that goes through a light. Obviously, Mr. Turner went through a number of lights at a high speed. So in that, we're aware of that. Yeah, so that obviously is going to have some impact. But it still is a situation in which we allege that none of that would have been relevant or would have occurred if it hadn't been for Mr. Turner's actions in setting it all in motion. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It's just no one wants to hear the idea that the deputy might have been negligent, but that's logical.
Well, there's certainly, I mean, and reasonable minds can differ. That's why we go to court, and that's why we have vigorous arguments, and the law is so, in my opinion, it cuts very close, right? And we look at that. But I can tell you that in terms of doing legal research and understanding that, in my experience, I'm not aware of any type of Watson murder where there weren't other traffic conditions in which people weren't necessarily abiding by traffic laws. There is no requirement that somehow it be a perfect storm where no one else has some actions that may impact what have happened, but it doesn't take away, in our opinion, in this particular instance, the responsibility that ultimately is on Mr. Turner, if that makes any sense. Okay.
Letty?
The Rialto incident was somewhere around 2023 or 2024. I can't exactly remember when, but that did involve similar conduct. There was a conviction in that matter in which Mr. Turner did go to prison. That's a matter of public record, so I feel comfortable about saying that. What also is a matter of public record is in that instance it involved a stolen car and it involved a pursuit, and there was an innocent person that got injured in that particular case. So that case was resolved. He did go to prison. He got released and was out on this particular. He was out on that case, but that's kind of the way that resolved. So that does play a little bit into it. So there's relevance in terms of not that there's a prior DUI, but there's relevance that there's previous conduct that indicates when you're caught with something that isn't yours, you flee at a high rate of speed, and that's the potential of people getting injured, and it did. And of course, in this instance, someone was killed. So it's a good question.
I have two questions. So if he hadn't had so many priors, do you think murder could have been a charge still for this? And then I have another question.
I do, and we've done that. In the law squarely says that even if you only have one instance of driving a vehicle with a reckless indifference for life, that you can be charged with murder. And we've been successful in at least 2 cases in this county, and there's cases all over California that does in fact happen. Now, obviously, that depends on each facts and circumstance, right? Here, we know from the call-out history that this pursuit is going on for no less than 8 minutes, right? I could speculate and say if there was a pursuit that was less than 30 seconds, is that going to go into the reckless indifference realm? I don't know. But in this particular instance, even without the prior information that we're aware of, based upon the events of Monday, the charges would have been the same.
And can you talk about, so I saw that he had been convicted of misdemeanor vehicle theft back in July of 23, and then there was another charge, and I don't know if these are related, but in November of 2023, and then the last one, which was January of 24. So were all of these kind of separate incidents that all go into this, and then if you could maybe make that or distinguish between those first two of 23?
Well, what I want to say in terms of the auto theft convictions, it's a matter of public record, and we've alleged it in our complaint that he has 2 prior convictions for auto theft. Those were separate instances because the case numbers are different on our complaint. As it relates to prior conduct of fleeing at high rates of speed, then we're aware of at least 2 other instances in which that happened. One was in Rialto and one was in the city of San Bernardino.
I saw that some of those convictions also led to a plea deal. Could you
Yes.
confirm that? So the first 2
Yes.
at least were plea deals, but all of these other charges, including having a loaded firearm, all these things were dismissed. Can you go into why those would be dismissed in the first place?
I don't have those particular cases in mind in terms of understanding exactly what the procedure is. I'll give you a general sense of when there's a number of current criminal cases that are stacking up against an individual, it's not uncommon that we decide on particular charges, particularly if it involves property, where we want to get restitution back for somebody, and we may resolve those cases to be able to get restitution back for the victim who's lost their car or other item of value. And then maybe as a result of that, part of the plea deal is we dismiss other charges. That's very, very common. Whether that happened in this case, I don't know. But that's not uncommon to have happen.
This is a second-degree murder charge, correct?
That's correct.
And what's the potential exposure if convicted is currently charged?
Shows you how long I've been out of the. I think it's 15 to life.
All right, 15 to life on the second.
And feel free if anybody wishes to. Okay. Yeah.
So that's 50. Yeah, that's.
So.
I mean, it depends on how the judge sentences her and consecutive.
Well, you'd be talking on count 1 a potential of 15 to life, and then because count 2 is separate, you could run that a part of that consecutive. Count 3 is separate altogether. You could run that consecutive.
So what could be the potential?
15 plus maybe 2 plus 8, 17 to life. Maybe, and I'm saying conservative, Brian. I want to be very conservative. I don't want to overshoot.
And he was arrested. One of the arrest charges was driving under the influence. Did you guys just decide not to file that, or did that not quite turn out to be true?
No, as Jackie indicated, the investigation is still ongoing, and as it relates to oftentimes scientific and chemical evidence, that takes a little bit more time to be able to get that back. To turn around scientific samples takes a little bit longer. So we may have updates on that, but that's a good question. That was something that was done initially. We're following up on that. We're just waiting for the results.
Okay, I think that's good.
If you just go back to protocol for lights and sirens when you guys go on these calls, and also if you can talk about kind of the danger of these pursuits. Is there any way
Sure. So that is part of our training, and to evaluate that, also a part of the training in terms of the watch commander who evaluates pursuits. But I would encourage all of you, and to Brian's question also, what I'd encourage all of you to do is certainly follow this case. As you can imagine, the law enforcement profession is very dynamic, and as we go through these types of cases, we reach reasonable suspicion and probable cause before we take the actions that we take. And I think you're going to find, as the evidence becomes public, that you'll understand why the deputy took the actions that he took, particularly in this case. I would like to go into more specifics with all of you, but I don't want to do that right now while we're still receiving all this information preliminarily.
And just to confirm, was he one of 2 deputies that were in pursuit of Turner?
We had multiple deputies that were in pursuit of Turner, and some of these, like I said, is developed in timing based on radio contact, Turner's location, and where the deputies' locations were. Absolutely.
Sheriff, how's everyone in the department doing today? I know it's only been a couple of days, but what do you guys need from the community?
Number one, I want to thank our community here in San Bernardino County and, frankly, the community nationwide. The outpouring of support for Deputy Cuevas, who was obviously an impactful deputy sheriff to this community, and I'll say geographically, we all know the expanse of San Bernardino County, but in Victorville where he patrolled, certainly where he went to church and grew up in San Bernardino, and then where he lives in Fontana. And I can tell you, I couldn't be more proud. I've received calls from the director of the FBI, the Attorney General of the state of California, just about every single one of our legislators here, both locally and in the state, with the outpouring of support, and I couldn't be more proud. I'm always proud of this county, whether it's our board members, whether it's our district attorney, or any of our other politicians here, because they speak the community's voice. And in this community, we hold criminals accountable, and I expect my deputies to do that. I could not be more proud of Deputy Cuevas for protecting this community and vehemently going after criminals, and that, frankly, is my expectations for this department. And again, I am so appreciative of that support, because law enforcement officers out there at any time, I talk about their ability to swear to protecting us as a community, and a lot of times we generally think those are words. They aren't words, they're a commitment, and if anybody spelled that out, commitment, with their life, it was Deputy Cuevas.
What do you think needs to change in order to prevent something like this from happening, especially with Turner and his record? I mean, it speaks for itself.
Well, I want to really thank the Rialto chief who explained their case here publicly by releasing a press release. And in that, they also mentioned a number of state policies. And you talk about halftime when somebody goes to prison rather than serving their full sentence. And I think in this case, if we do the math, there's a chance Hector Cuevas could have been alive had Ryan Turner served his full sentence. And I think we need to evaluate those. When we talk about prison realignment, I've been in law enforcement for 33 years, particularly with the Sheriff's Department, longer than that with other departments. But what I've seen in terms of state policy and what I'm seeing from our community, not just in this county but across the state, if we look at Proposition 36 and the voter turnout for that, our citizens, and that's who I represent, that's who the DA represents, that's who all of our deputies work for, they would like change, and they want to see criminals held accountable. And in this case, we're talking about a recidivist that has had this pattern of behavior over and over again, and unfortunately, now we're talking about the death of a law enforcement officer.
Sheriff, why do these people engage you guys in pursuits? Just, you know, you got the helicopters, you've got great communication between agencies. I mean, they almost never get away, correct?
Brian, we have a lot of modern technology. You mentioned helicopters and a number of things. We do have protocols where we try to keep these things as safe as possible to the public. But as I mentioned, they're just dynamic. And we have to remember, we're always responding to the criminal. The criminal is the one responsible for these actions, no matter tragic outcomes. And you've heard me say before that in many circumstances, what law enforcement does is awful but lawful. And when I say awful, I'm talking about the human condition. There are things and tragedies that result out of this, whether they're to citizens or certainly in this case with a law enforcement officer. But we're willing to take that risk, and we're willing to take that risk on behalf of our public, and we're not going to let criminals skate, period. And that's the way we work. Brian, that's a question for the beginning of time. As long as there's good guys and bad guys, I think we're going to continue to see that play out. And as technology is bettered, I certainly hope that we find a way to be able to solve these in a much different fashion rather than having pursuits. And as technology is being delivered to law enforcement now, I hope we see that in the near future. Yes, great question, Brian. I appreciate you asking that. Every pursuit, every law enforcement officer-involved shooting, there are always after-action reports, and we immediately deal with any training issues through what we call our use of force program, which the deputies go through quarterly. We update the law at that period of time and any training issues that we see occurring across our department to make sure that they have the latest and greatest training. Jackie?
Yep. Thank you, everyone. So finally, I wanted to recap that Defendant Turner will be arraigned tomorrow in person at Victorville Superior Courthouse, Department V9, scheduled for 8:30 in the morning. Also, I wanted to let you all know we do have a Spanish speaker here that is available for interviews afterwards that could translate this. And we do have a press release coming out shortly, which will include the complaint, and I have a couple copies here if you'd like to take some right now. And everything will be up on our website afterwards. So thank you all for your time, and I appreciate you. This is all. And actually, one last thing, I did want to acknowledge that the entire Victorville station came today to honor Deputy Cuevas during this important announcement. I did want to acknowledge that all of them are here to stand strong today. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.